Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. Today, I'm delighted we're going to be speaking to Kikkan Randall, who's a 5-time Olympian, Olympic champion, cross-country skier in 2018 and world champion. She's a Get activist and a mum athlete. She's also recently been diagnosed with breast cancer. Hi, Kikkan.
Hi, how's it going?
Very well, thank you. Where are you based at the moment? Where are you living?
I just recently moved to British Columbia with my husband and my son, but I'm back up in Alaska right now with my family.
Oh, fabulous. Are you training back up there?
I'm actually done training now. I retired this spring. I was recently diagnosed with breast cancer, so I am up in Alaska for my treatment, and I'll be going back and forth between British Columbia and Alaska for that.
Oh, wow. There's going to be definitely a lot going on. How would you introduce yourself?
Many things, but someone asked me the other day in an interview 3 words to describe myself, and that turned out to be pretty hard because I see myself in a lot of different ways, but I narrowed it down to focused, energetic, and determined. And I think that really kind of encompasses who I am, and I bring that to all the things that I do in life. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I am a recently retired Olympic skier, but definitely an athlete at the bottom of everything that I do. I love getting people excited about being healthy and active. I love encouraging girls to stay involved in sports. And I've always been interested in the way our organizations work. So I've done a lot of work as an athlete representative as well. And mostly I love being outdoors. I love living life to the fullest.
Could you share a little bit more about the background of your name, and does it have any special meaning, or is there a special reason why your parents named you that?
Yeah, there's not a lot of Kikkans out there. My parents kind of made it up. My dad grew up, fell in love with alpine skiing, and always was fond of an Olympic skier named Christina Cutter, and her nickname is Kiki. So my dad always thought she had a lot of good energy, and then my parents kind of liked the name Megan, so they ended up mixing the two together and got Kikkan.
Oh, I love it. Amazing. So Kikkan, tell us a little bit more about your family and growing up. Did you have any brothers and sisters? Were you going on skis at, like sort of 6 months old or something?
Well, my dad was working at a rental shop right after I was born, an alpine ski rental shop. And so on my first birthday, he brought home the smallest boots and smallest skis they had. And he built a little hill for me in the front yard. And so I was skiing at the age of 1, I think officially before I could walk. And then he used to take me up to the ski areas in Utah and tie a rope around my waist and just kind of let me go down the ski runs. And so from my earliest memories, I've loved being on snow. I've loved the feeling of gliding, and I've loved being outside. And I grew up in a very active family. My mom was a collegiate cross-country skier and a runner. My dad played football growing up and then fell in love with alpine and got into that. I have an aunt and uncle that went to the Olympics in cross-country skiing, so I had kind of the Olympic theme in my family. I have a younger brother and a younger sister and lots of cousins. And we moved to Alaska when I was 3, and so my childhood was full of hiking and camping and climbing trees and just always being active with my siblings and my cousins. And early on, I discovered that I loved sports. I loved being really active. I vividly remember watching my first Olympic Games when I was 5 years old and deciding right then I wanted to go to the Olympics, like my aunt and uncle, and just determined to try every sport until I found the one that was going to be my favorite. So I grew up doing a lot of different things, and I really credit all the different activities I did growing up for allowing me to develop a really broad skill base, getting to try things that I was good at, getting to try things I was not so good at, and learn a lot of lessons through that, and ultimately settle on the sport of cross-country skiing, which was really a nice combination of a lot of those other activities I did, and kind of this open frontier. No American woman had ever won an Olympic medal in the sport, and I just had this burning belief down inside there was no reason why we couldn't do it, and kind of set on this path to try to make that happen.
Oh, incredible. How old were you when you found the cross-country skiing?
I started at age 6, but I will admit I didn't love it at first. It was hard work and it was cold, and I had to be coaxed along with hot chocolate and a lot of games. But when I was in high school, I had gotten more seriously into running, and all my running friends were doing cross country skiing in the winter. And so I initially did it as kind of a social way to stay in shape, and then found that it had all the elements of running. I was alpine racing at the time. I loved the thrill of the downhill, and it had kind of a team component like soccer. So around the age of 16, I started to really take the sport seriously and formulate some goals. The 2002 Olympics at that point were only 3 years away, so I kind of set the big idea of trying to make the Olympic team at a very young age, and ended up qualifying for that team, competing in those Olympics, and from there dreamt of winning an Olympic medal someday. And that set me on about a 20-year path that just ended this spring.
Oh, it's so incredible and so inspiring. But, I would love to go back to, in terms of like this, the goal setting and setting goals. Were you very goal driven? Was that something that maybe members of your family did? How did you know that you wanted to set a goal and that was the goal that you wanted to set?
I think I was really fortunate as I grew up through around my family and through different sports, that goal setting was something I latched onto very early. It started in elementary school we did a mile run around the school every year, and every year I set the goal to improve upon my time, and I would record my time and then think about how I wanted to improve. And I think through that I was able to not only have goals that I set in front of me, but I was also able to track my progress. And I learned that an equal part to goal setting is that you have to have some intermediate things that show you're on track to your big goal. So I started to develop that early on, and then once I got into high school, I had big goals about doing well in cross country running and track and skiing. And then from there, I set my sights on the Olympics. And then after qualifying for my first Olympic team, it was a really big jump to think about going from 44th place to winning an Olympic medal. But I got to sit down with my coaches, and we made this roadmap that really was going to take 10 years. And we built out on all these different benchmarks I was going to have to hit along the way. And what was cool is I had that big dream of winning an Olympic medal that was that motivator that really got me out the door every day. And then I had this path of how I was going to get there. So it felt achievable. And then along the way, I had these benchmarks that I could focus on. And then when I reached each one, I could check that off, and it gave me a boost of confidence. And I just kind of kept going forward. And thanks to that roadmap, I feel like that got me through some times where I wasn't seeing progress, and it kept me working. And then pretty soon it's like I woke up one day and all of a sudden I'd made it through that 10 years, and I was ready to go for an Olympic medal.
Oh, do you know, I find this absolutely fascinating. I'd love to know more. I mean, did you write your goals down? Did you create a vision board? Did you record everything on an Excel spreadsheet? Like, how did you manage this process? Like, did you have, yeah, I've already asked that, but I'm sort of imagining, like, in your room, if you woke up and like straight ahead of you, you could see this vision board with, the Olympic medal on there with your times, with that roadmap almost drawn out with all the benchmarks written on. I mean, did you do that?
I would say my goal setting took many different forms over the years. When I was young, it started with posters on my wall of Olympic athletes and athletes I looked up to. In fact, I had newspaper clippings pinned to my ceiling. So it was the last thing I saw when I went to bed every night. It was Olympic skiers that I wanted to be like. And then later on, I started writing down my goals. And this is kind of before the computers really became a big deal. So I physically wrote down, and actually had in high school, I wrote down 50 goals I wanted to achieve in life, I think. And of course, when you're 16, you have a little bit narrow view of what your life goals are. But I came across that piece of paper a couple of years ago, and I was amazed at how many things on that list I was actually able to check off. And I think that's because I made the point of writing them down. And then as kind of technology has become more and more important, I have tried to utilize that as a resource, and have tracked a lot of my training, a lot of my goals, a lot of my results on Excel spreadsheets. And what I found is that for the years that I was really kind of gradually building up, I would get a really good result and then maybe a not so good result the next week. And by able to track the entire season and kind of see what the trends were doing, I was able to show myself that I was making steady progress towards my big goals. And I think that was really important for keeping that confidence that I was getting to my ultimate goal. Even if I was still back in 33rd place, I was making the progress I needed to. So I really think that making the effort to write down my goals, go back and revisit them quite a bit, and then be able to really give myself metrics to analyze how I was doing, ultimately kept me going on the right path. And that's so important.
So important and so powerful as well, being to visually see your progress, because I think it's very easy to almost forget how far you've come because you can't necessarily see the wood from the trees. You mentioned as well, so, before you went to bed at night, you'd look up at your ceiling and you've had all these images of Olympic skiers who you wanted to be like. Just out of interest, were there any female Olympic skiers on there? Did you have any female role models at that time?
They were all women on my ceiling.
Oh my God. Yeah, for some reason, I just assumed that they were all going to be men. And I know that's really awful of me. So that's so good that they're all women. Any particular women that you had up there?
Yeah, so I feel really fortunate that I grew up in Anchorage, Alaska. We're of all the 50 states in the U.S., we're the one that doesn't have a pro sports team. So our state really celebrates the Winter Olympic athletes. And so I had a couple of women that were actually from Alaska that were on the Olympic team. One, her name was Nina Kempel, and she was about 10 or 12 years older than me. And so we actually went to my first Olympics together. It was her fourth and final Olympics, and it was my first. And so I had followed her career up to the point where we had become teammates. So she was on my ceiling, but I also had some of the top Norwegian skiers and Italian skiers that were on my ceiling as well. And my room wasn't just skiers. It was soccer players. It was downhill skiers. I mean, I really tried to draw inspiration from as many places as I possibly could.
And going back to your roadmap as well, you've gone to your first Olympics, come in at 44th position. You came out of that. You ended up having a conversation with your coach, talking about your goals, what you wanted to achieve, the big dream of getting that Olympic medal. And you designed this roadmap, and you said it was eventually going to take about 10 years to do this. Where did you find the motivation to keep going? Because I imagine along the way, there must have been incredible high points, but also low points. What kept you going on that journey?
I think it was having that roadmap in place, of having kind of the understanding of the long-term process, and knowing that if I just kept hitting these benchmarks, that I was eventually going to get there. So even when I was maybe falling just short of some of these benchmarks or some of these intermediate goals, I knew I had time. I knew that every year I trained, that work was going to add up and keep pushing me forward. And so I just tried to think of, okay, maybe it's not going as the way I want right here in the short term, but every day I get out there, I'm adding more training and I'm gaining more experience and I'm learning and I'm growing. And I think just kind of knowing that I was going to keep going, and maybe also knowing that the most important part was that I was giving my best effort every day. And in the end, that no matter what happened result wise, no one could take that away from me. I was succeeding. I was challenging myself, and every day I was getting better. And I think that's the further I got into the journey, the more important that became. You got to challenge yourself. You got to put it out there because it's the goal that's motivating you. But it really comes back to the effort you're giving, and only you truly know what that effort is. But when you know you've laid it out there, you've pushed past your comfort zone, you get an amazing satisfaction from that I think keeps pushing you forward.
Are you a patient person?
I would say overall, that is one of my good qualities, that I do have the ability to be patient, and I do have the ability to really focus on the moment right in front of me and focus on what I can control. And it's not to say I don't get impatient, because I certainly do. I've certainly had injuries and illness where I really start to freak out, and doubt myself. But then I'm always able to kind of pull it back to, okay, focus on what you can control, get through this one step at a time. And there have been a lot of moments where I've had to be very patient through my career, but it's always paid off in bigger rewards than I could have ever imagined.
Well, while you've been sort of an Olympic athlete, have you been working as well, or have you been training as a full-time athlete?
Early on in my career, working was a necessity. I had to help fund my training. I had to, afford to live and eat and all those kind of things. So I tried to be creative about it. I found a job at a running store through high school, and for a few years afterwards that was complementary with my athletic goals. They were willing to be flexible. That was really important. And I enjoyed the work because it was along the same lines of what I was doing in training. Then I got to a point where I realized that if I was going to be competitive with athletes my age and the rest of the world who were focusing 100% on training, that I couldn't afford to be working 3 to 4 hours in between workouts. So I made a commitment to really work hard on training, and I started to try to find creative ways to bring people onto my journey with me, and help support some of my training costs. And then in return, I got to use what I was doing every day as a way to inspire them to be their best selves, to be healthy and active. And I started to bring on these partners that contributed to my training, and then they got a lot out of it. And in return, we built these great partnerships. And I think that was a turning point in my career, because if I'd continued to have to split my time between work and training, I would never have been able to put in the amount of work I needed to. So by bringing on ways to support that full-time training and then be able to share the journey, I progressed my performance, but I also developed this great support team of people that were really invested in what I was doing, and I got to share what I was doing with them, which gave my training more meaning.
You mentioned as well that while you were on this journey, you'd occasionally have these like freakouts and doubt would set in. And I think that's a really interesting point when you are in one of these holes or having one of these like low moments. How did you get yourself out of it? How did you get yourself back onto that positive spiral going up?
I guess I would start to recognize that the negative voice in my head was starting to outweigh the positive voice. And then I was thankfully able to kind of step back and go, okay, this is not going to get me anywhere. Complaining to myself, doubting myself, that's not going to change anything. That's not going to get me where I want. And no matter how low I got, there was always something I could do, whether it was needing to take more rest or, going out and taking 10 minutes around the block instead of the hour I thought I needed. I feel like there was always something I could come back to and do right in that moment that was going to contribute towards my goal instead of take away from it. And it definitely took a lot of, positive self-talk. It took some recognition of what was going on in my head, and then constantly trying to reframe and refocus on the things I could control. And sometimes it helped to have people around me that I could either pour my attention into them, or they could, provide some of that kind of positive encouragement. Sometimes it took putting on a good soundtrack with some songs that gave you messages about being strong and having energy. If one time I even resorted to looking at cute cat photos on Pinterest, just something to kind of take my mind off the negative path I was on and bring it back to things that just kind of made me happy, and again, focusing on what I control. So just a lot of little strategies. Not everyone worked all the time, but I think overall I was always able to pull myself back, because again, the negative thinking, the doubt, it doesn't get you anywhere, and you can always reframe it and find something to keep you going forward.
Talk to me about 2008 as a year, because you had a big high, but also a low. What happened in that year?
So it was technically December 2007, but it was the 2008 season, and I won my first World Cup. So that was the first time ever that an American woman had won a cross-country World Cup. It was an amazing breakthrough for me, for my team, and I literally felt on top of the world. So I had that high. I was also engaged, getting ready to be married in April. I'm so excited about that new phase of my life that was coming up. And then a few months later, it was the very end of the ski season, and I started to get some pain in my back that then kind of went to my hip and my leg. And I ended up being diagnosed with a massive blood clot. And all of a sudden, feeling invincible went to now being unsure of whether or not I'd ever be able to continue even being an athlete. And at points even, afraid of my life. So it was quite a contrast, but I ended up using a lot of the same skills that I had used to get through some of my athletic challenges to just stop thinking about what could happen and come back to, well, what can I do right in this moment to get better? And thankfully, I was able to use those positive psychology things to get me through. Of course, I had the nice distraction of getting married and the amazing support of my soon-to-be husband and great family support. And I was able to work through that and ultimately get back on my skis. And then through that, I gained a huge appreciation for just being able to simply be out and be the athlete that I like to be. And I think having that gratitude and not taking any more moments for granted fueled me to then go on to win my first world championship medal 8 months later.
Honestly, I love your story. It's just absolutely incredible and so inspiring. What's a typical week like for a professional athlete at your level? I mean, what does it look like? How much are you working out? How much are you resting? How much are you eating?
Yeah, so it's pretty all encompassing. Monday morning would start out with, the first thing you do when you get up is I'm a huge breakfast person. So I'd make a big breakfast because I knew I needed to fuel my entire day. Then I'd head off to training. I was really fortunate to be able to have a team to train with most of the time. So I'd have a coach and teammates that I'd be meeting for training. We'd train a couple hours. Right after that, I'd have a recovery snack, come back, do some body care. Which was sometimes using foam rollers and ice baths and things like that. Sometimes it was massage. Then a healthy lunch. Then nap time. I'm lucky. I'm a good sleeper, so I'd usually lay down for an hour or two nap, and then get back up, fuel up, go train again for another couple hours, come back, refuel, have dinner, have a pretty mellow evening, and then get up and do it all over again. And we would do that 6 days of the week. We're twice a day workouts. And then the seventh day would usually be an adjustment day. So if you were feeling pretty good, you'd go out and do something light and easy to keep the body moving and keep things progressing. If you were really feeling tired, then that was probably a sign you needed the day off. But I actually found that my body responded to a little bit of light exercise as opposed to not doing anything, that I actually recovered better. And so we would do that in 3-week cycles where we'd push pretty hard. And then the fourth week, again, would be a bit of an adjustment, either slow down to kind of absorb the big load we just done, or kind of keep going if things were cranking along. And then we would do those. That was kind of a microcycle. And then we'd train that for about 7 months of the year to prepare for a 4-month race season. And we really would only take the month of April to stop doing the 2-a-day workouts and take a little mental break from everything. And then we'd start doing it all over again. So I like to say we were kind of on call 24/7 because every decision you make, all the training that directly affects your performance. But at the same time, most of my days were going out and being outside and training with my teammates and, pushing myself and just getting stronger every day. So it's a pretty amazing lifestyle.
So you said in April you sort of stopped training twice a day and you'd have that mental break. What I'd be really interested in is the mental training that you do in preparation for something like the Olympics. So, how do you cope when this is your dream, this is your goal, this is what you have worked towards? You've got friends, you've got family, you've got Olympians in your family, you've got your town, your country wanting you to do well, wanting you to succeed. How do you handle that pressure?
You spend a lot of time being your own best cheerleader. I find coming into those big championships, there's a lot going through your head. You're definitely thinking about the expectations, all the people that have helped you, that really want you to do well, the people that are watching for you, the opportunities that are available beyond, should you get the result you want. But I really found that I just tried to really keep things simple. I knew coming into those championships that the majority of the hard work had already been done. So it wasn't the time to try harder, to add in a bunch of extra things. It was more about just making sure that the process to prepare for each race was what I was used to, and just, kind of executing one step at a time. And then for me, I always found that I performed best when I just was in kind of a lighthearted, fun atmosphere. I really thrive on being around my teammates. And so doing activities together, whether that be playing charades or wearing the same outfit to training, listening to our favorite music together, just really kind of using each other to keep the atmosphere light and fun and focused. And then just doing the things that we had practiced one step at a time. And I think the major championship performances where I did the best was when I really just kept things simple, and I really just thought about doing my best And the times maybe when it didn't go so well is when I let myself think too much about the pressure and the expectations, and I caught a lost sight of the process and thought too much about the result. So coming into my final Olympics, I think I did a really good job of just enjoying the experience, doing the process, keeping things simple, and ultimately I got my best performances.
Yeah, it's interesting. While you were talking, there was two questions that I wrote down, and you ended up answering them. One is like, I was going to ask you, like, do you enjoy it when you're competing, and do you have fun? I think you've answered those questions. But tell us about the 2018 Olympics. Tell us about that race.
So this was my fifth Olympics, and I knew it was going to be my last one. So I made a promise to myself that I really wanted to enjoy the process, to kind of take in all the things that are unique about the Olympics, really enjoy being with my teammates, knowing that I wouldn't be spending as much time with them going beyond this. But I also came in with some of my own challenges. I had gotten a stress fracture in my foot in January, and I had been working my way back into shape, but our team was really strong, and I wasn't even sure if I was going to make my own team. So I just had to take things one day at a time and know that each race I got to do could be my first, could be my last race, but just to give everything I had. And I have a 2-year-old son, and he was back with his grandparents during the Olympics. So for the first time, I found myself kind of on my own again and had all this time. And I really tried to make the most of it. I mean, I went and got my hair done in the Olympic salon, and I took the time to really hang out with my teammates. And so as we came into the Olympics, the first race I did actually went horribly. I didn't get my nutrition right. And I came in and I blew up in the first 2K out of 15K and cramped and thought to myself, oh man, I hope I just didn't blow it. That may have been my last shot. And then thankfully I got another chance in the next race, and that went a little bit better. And my shape was really getting better every single day, which was cool, but I wasn't sure if it was going to happen in time. So when we came into the relay events, which were the two races I was looking forward to the most, each chance I got, I just was grateful to have and made the most of it. And I love the team events. And so I got to race in the 4x5K relay, and we knew we had an outside shot at a medal. And unfortunately, early in the race, we kind of had some struggles and we were kind of out of it. But I raced with everything I had, and we ended up 5th place. And that was the best Olympic result we'd ever had. So even though we fell short of the medal, I think we all kind of celebrated that little victory together. And then it came down to the team sprint, which was the event I was looking forward to the most. And the decision on who would race in the two spots really came down to the last 24 hours. So when I found out that I got to be on the team, I was just so excited and so ready to give everything I had out on that trail. And the day of the race, my teammate and I really had a fun day together. We were hanging out in our dorm in the Olympic Village, and she and I had teamed up together 5 years previous, and we won gold at the World Championships. And that year we'd really been to the show Glee. So we decided to pull out all our favorite Glee clips and rewatch them. And the last one we saw before leaving the dorm was Don't Stop Believing. And I think that may have been a sign. The whole day, we never talked about the medals. We only talked about going out and skiing our hardest, skiing smart. We wore these relay socks that the entire team wore. We had face paint on. And so when we went out that night, I just was in this great mindset where I was going to be content no matter what happened. As long as I knew I gave it my best effort out there, I was going to enjoy it. And I was so excited to have a teammate that I had total confidence in. And we just went out and we did our thing. We didn't need any magic. We just skied strong and smart and confident. And with each lap of the race, we were just in better and better contention. And so in the final, I skied the opening leg, and I was up against two of the best skiers that have probably ever been in the sport. I mean, one woman from Norway had already won 14 Olympic medals. The other had already won 2 Olympic medals earlier that week. And I knew my job was just to hang with these girls. And as the laps went on, I was right in there, and I got to tag off to my teammate right in contact for the medals, and then watch how she would ski that final leg. And I was pretty blown out for my leg. So by the time I made it over the finish to watch, the skiers were coming into the stadium. And as they came around the final turn, I was standing right next to the Swedish girl, and our teams were in the fight for the win. And so we're both screaming at our teammates as if we can control whoever screams the loudest wins the race. So we're screaming and screaming, and they're coming straight on. And so we can't tell who's ahead. And both the skiers lunge at the finish line. And so I look up at the scoreboard expecting to see photo finish. And when I saw number 1, United States, I just ran out there and I tackled my teammate, and we shared this amazing moment together. She asked me if we'd just won the Olympics, and I told her an emphatic, yeah, we did. And the best part was that our entire team, so many girls that could have easily been in either of our 2 spots, were there supporting us all night, and we got to jump up and go run over and hug them and share this incredible moment of validation and satisfaction with our entire team. And I think that was probably the most incredible moment. And just to know that this lifelong dream of winning an Olympic medal, the 20-year journey that I'd been on, we'd finally made that happen. And it was amazing.
Oh my God, I've got tears running down my face. That is so, it's absolutely incredible. Obviously, massive congratulations to both you and to your teammate, Jessie Diggins. I mean, do you know the line that really stood out for me when you were talking? It was when you said, I was going to be content. Like you were just going out there to enjoy it and have fun, and you're just going to try your best, and absolutely love that. Just incredible. I mean, such a young age, you've had this dream, you've gone out, you've worked so hard, you've followed that roadmap, you've done everything that you needed to do, and you came out with a result, which is absolutely incredible. I'd love to know what it was like after the euphoria died down and you'd accomplished this goal, this childhood dream. I mean, what happened next?
Well, the funny part about winning an Olympic medal, a gold medal, is that we had all dreamed about wanting to do it, and no one had ever thought of what to do if we actually won. So we were in totally new territory. It was this crazy whirlwind of media interviews and traveling around and celebrating with all the various groups that had helped us get there, and going to New York City and appearing on live TV shows, and just this incredible whirlwind. And I tried to just enjoy every moment of it, because it was, kind of what I'd thought would be fun to do my entire career. And it was our chance to tell our cross country story to the world, to our nation, and to really highlight what we love about our sport. And so I think Jessie and I both really enjoyed that opportunity. But I can't believe the effect that our performance has had on so many people. And the gold medal is about 1.5 pounds, 600 grams. And so to carry that thing around and put it in people's hands and see their faces light up has probably been one of the coolest parts for me. Because I'm proud of the accomplishment, but to really see the effect that it can have on people and make them feel like they can achieve something, and has been so much fun. And my medal has been in the hands of thousands of people at this point. We've taken so many pictures, and it's been this crazy whirlwind. But then you do reach a point where that kind of fades a little bit. And for me, since I was retiring, it was all of a sudden like, okay, I've spent 20 years chasing that goal, and I made it happen. So now what? And I was just starting to really figure out kind of what my new goals were going to be, and my new structure in life, because every day I'd had a training plan to follow and a team to meet and all these things. And all of a sudden that wasn't going to be there anymore. And I was just starting to kind of formulate all that stuff. And then I found out I had breast cancer. And so that has radically kind of changed my focus. I've had to now suddenly go into the mode where I've got to figure out my treatment and figure out my goals and getting over the cancer. But I'm again finding I'm going to rely a lot on my athletic career and all the things about focusing on what I can control, making a plan, getting through things one step at a time, being really grateful for the days I feel good, for the amazing support system I have around me, enjoying the time with my family, and I'm going to get through this one step at a time. And I'm going to use the same positive attitude I use for skiing. And then when I get through all this, then I'll start to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life.
What was it like being diagnosed?
Well, for me, it was just it was so unbelievable at first because I just won an Olympic gold medal. I was at the, height of my, athletic career and just feeling strong and invincible. And it's just, at first, it's just disbelief. Like, no, this can't be me. I've got other plans. But at the same time, thankfully I had a good medical team around me that, we were able to diagnose this early and to put a treatment plan in action right away. And so many people have, my family right away was just so good at just focusing on the positives and the things that we could really control. And it's been a roller coaster for sure. I think for the most part, I've been able to stay pretty practical and focused on what I need to do. But there's certainly been moments of just disbelief, of anger, of frustration, just going, hey, I've done all the right things. I've stayed active. I've eat healthy. I don't smoke. I do all the things they say you should do to prevent breast cancer. And yet it still happened to me. So it's certainly been different than any other experience I've ever been for. It definitely makes you realize that you're a mortal person and you can't take anything for granted. So it's not an experience I would have ever thought I would be going through or wish to go through, but I'm in it now and I'm going to make the best of it.
Absolutely. Tell me more about your Get Activist. What does that mean and where did that come from?
So I've always been really passionate about encouraging others to be physically active and to be healthy, because I know that that's the cornerstone of who I am, and it's given me so many good things in life. I love the energy I get from it, and I want everyone to experience that. And so right after my first Olympics, I got involved with a program called Healthy Futures. And it was really about going around to schools here in Alaska and encouraging kids to develop those daily physical activity habits, so that whether or not they wanted to be competitive athletes, the most important part was if they had the physical activity as a part of every day, that would encourage them to be healthy. And so as part of that, I was going out and encouraging people to get active. And the woman who started the program, she joked that, I was a Get Activist. And right away, that just resonated with me. I love the idea of, I'm not just an ambassador for this program or spokesperson. I get out there and I get people going. And I've loved being a part of that program ever since. And I've segued it into a lot of different opportunities. But ultimately, I love encouraging people to get active, and it's everywhere in my life. Like I just started my son at a new daycare, and I was talking with the lady who runs the daycare, and she's like, yeah, I think I'd like to get more active. And so I said, great, let's meet for a hike next week. And I've been going out and doing some stuff with her and trying to encourage her to get more active. And everywhere I go, I can't help it.
I'd say I think I'd be a little bit intimidated if an Olympic athlete was like, come on, let's go hiking. I'd be like, oh, crap.
Yeah, I really, I recognize that as an Olympic athlete, I'm very disconnected from what a lot of people may feel like and what they're going through. And I'm just fascinated to understand the psychology behind it and really create ways for people to take on these new habits kind of one day at a time. And I know it's challenging, and I know it's, hard to convince yourself to go outside the comfort zone. But if you can help kind of encourage people one step at a time and they can start to see the success, then I think that really starts to build on itself. So it's something I know I still have a lot to learn, but I really enjoy actually working with people that come from a different space in life than I do.
I think it can be really interesting because it must be because you've been so driven, so motivated, so focused, it must be very difficult to try and relate to people who maybe don't necessarily have that in them. And it is, I really struggle to understand like how you can encourage people to take that first step. What is it that stops people from getting active or going outside or facing those fears or stepping outside the comfort zone? What do you think you've discovered so far from these engagements and trying to encourage more people to get active?
Well, I have a little saying that I'm always teasing my family with, and they're sick of hearing it, but I say, little goals, small successes, build your confidence, become the person you want to be. And I really feel like that's the cornerstone for everyone in whatever challenge they're trying. And so for someone who has not been physically active, wants to get healthier, I think one of the biggest barriers is we initially have so much motivation that we tend to take too big of a step right out the door. And so we overextend ourselves Therefore, you get way outside your comfort zone. Your body says, whoa, we're not used to doing this. And you get the aches and pains and discomfort. And then you go, whoa, I can't handle this. It's too much. And then you back off and you fall off the wagon. So I think the real key is kind of having a plan, putting your goal out there, having the roadmap of how you're going to get there, and then taking the small steps, taking a step that you can go out and you could do something and go, okay, my body handled that. And then actually making yourself do it 2 more times when you feel like, oh, I should be progressing at the next level. It's like, no, prove to yourself you can do this step. Then when you do that, you get to pat yourself on the back and say, great, I made that step. Now I get to advance to the next one. I really believe that feeling those small successes are so important for getting to your big goal. And I think too many people, they don't set themselves up to have those small successes, and then they get discouraged. So it's really about helping people figure out what is that appropriate first step and helping them feel that early success, which then starts to just build like a snowball. And once it gets rolling, then everybody, then they realize they're on the track, they're feeling better, and then it starts to become a real habit that they can continue.
How old are you and how old is your son now?
I am 35 and my son is coming up on 2.5.
From 2.5. So I'd just be interested in like how your life changed since you've had your son. So obviously, so it was sort of like the 2 years before the Olympics. So is that right?
Yeah. So after the 2014 Olympics, I had a big choice to make. I had come into that Olympics actually as a gold medal favorite. Went and did everything I possibly could, gave it my best effort, and actually fell short. I actually got eliminated in the quarterfinals that day. So after that, I had to decide whether or not I wanted to give 4 more years to another Olympics, but I also knew I wanted to start a family. And I realized I couldn't wait 4 more years. So my husband and I got strategic, and we were able to get pregnant about halfway through the Olympic cycle. And so I had to take a year off from racing to have my son, but then I was able to come back with 2 full seasons before the Olympics. So I got about a year to kind of get back onto the World Cup, get back in shape, kind of get back into racing, and then a year leading into the Olympics. And from the moment my son arrived, my life changed. I mean, as an athlete, you have to be very kind of self-centered and focused. And when he came into my life, I mean, your perspective suddenly changes and you realize, like, no, life is all about him. And then I will fit in as much as I can around that. And so, again, I had an amazing support system, and we were able to find a way so that I could still train, and I could bring my son along the journey with me. So he came over to Europe while I was racing on the World Cup, and he was there kind of every step of the way. And once I became a mom, I because I was taking care of my son, I didn't have unlimited time anymore to focus on training and recovery. So I really got more focused and made the most of every moment I could that I was out there training and recovery. But ultimately, I knew that win or lose, I got to come home to a smiling little boy that was happy to see me. And so it really kind of freed me to have gratitude for what I was doing, to be focused, and to ultimately, again, know that going out and giving the best effort was the most important. And that's what I'd like to pass on to my son. And I needed to be the living example of that. So I was grateful to be able to come back to racing. It was certainly challenging at points to get my body back in shape, but being a mom definitely gives you superpowers. And I was able to bounce back actually really quickly and come back to full strength. And I got to enjoy that whole process along with watching my son grow. And it's been more incredible than I could have ever imagined.
I was going to ask you, like, how easy was it to come back to life as a full-time athlete after having your child? Did you feel as though there was a certain amount of pressure on you because you are you've been to the Olympics so many times? Were people almost expecting you to be able to come back and perform straight away, or what was that like?
I was really lucky to have a lot of support from my team, from my sponsors, from my coach. I think everybody was optimistic that I would come back strong, potentially stronger than ever, and that we just wanted to be smart about the process of building my body back up so that we didn't get overzealous and try to come back too quickly. But then hopefully build back in time to be ready for their first race season. So it turns out that cross-country ski training is quite complicated. We have a lot of different modes of training. We have a lot of different intensities of strain, different stresses we put on the body. So we had to be kind of strategic about how we incrementally built things back in. But I was amazed how well my body responded. I think the biggest challenge initially was that my internal core muscles kind of had been switched off during pregnancy. Those were muscles I never really had to think about engaging before. They just automatically were there. So I had to spend a lot of extra time doing some Pilates work and really focused training to get those muscles back strong, so that was my kind of internal support system. Because the big muscles were still strong. I mean, I was able to train quite a bit through my pregnancy, of course, carrying the baby and all that extra blood volume. I actually felt like my aerobic system came back really strong. It did take me a while to get back to the point where I could really push myself over the red line. I don't know if that was just kind of from mentally having to be away from pushing that hard for a while, or if the physiology of my body just needed time to kind of get reacquainted with that. I found while I was breastfeeding that I didn't have as much tension in my muscles and joints as I'd had before. So when I went to really apply power, it took a while for that to come back. But every month or two, I'd kind of gain a new level back. And I would say at about 10 months after my son was born, I was back into great racing shape. And then at a year, I felt like my body was like totally back. So in the short term, it took some patience and some smart planning. But overall, I came back really strong. And I had the opportunities I needed to kind of progress back into shape. And then I think everybody in the end was really glad I continued to compete, because I came back stronger than ever.
And Kikkan, you do have a website and a blog. Do you just want to share the links to where people can find out more about you and the content that you're sharing on your website?
Yeah, so I've got a website, kikkan.com. Thankfully, I took a web page coding class right out of high school and registered my name back then. So kikkan.com is a nice, easy way. A lot of great information on there about my background and some of the activities and programs I'm involved with. And now some daily updates on my cancer journey. And then I'm very active on social media. Kikanimal is my tag name on Instagram and Twitter, and I'm Kikkan Randall on Facebook. So a great way to follow along on kind of all the things I get to do as an athlete, as a mom, and now as a cancer patient.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. And I know you've got sort of a number of blog posts up at the moment about going through chemo, which I know so many other women who, if they're going through something like that, will really appreciate you sharing. So I will make sure that I do put all of the links in the show notes. But Kikkan, thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast and sharing more about your incredible journey that you've been on, the challenges that you faced previously, the challenges that you're going through at the moment. It's absolutely inspiring. Just thank you for being so open and honest about it. I know your story will resonate with so many women out there.
Well, my pleasure. It's we've got an amazing sisterhood going of all the people that have keep pursuing challenge and know that getting through challenges opens up the best part of your lives. So thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Hey tribe, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Kikkan. What an incredibly inspiring woman. A couple of things that really stood out for me that I could really relate to, and I hope you can relate to as well, was how she did have this big goal, but she broke it down and she had this roadmap. So, she needed this to have this in place to keep that motivation going for the 10 years or 20 years, to get after that Olympic gold medal. I found that absolutely fascinating. I think it's very important to have a goal, to have a purpose, and to be very clear with what it is that you want to achieve in your life. If you don't have a goal, whether that's to do with your work life, your personal life, your fitness life, then what ends up happening is you end up just existing. You end up just going through the motions. So if you're not, so for example, when I'm not training for anything physical, I may still go to the gym, but I'm not really working that hard. There's no sense of urgency. There's no actually, I'm really focused and I'm really committed on this. But if I know that I'm training for the Pacific Coast Highway or cycling the Baja Divide, then I know that I need to do my training. I need to be consistent. I need to give it my all in the training so that when I do go out on my bike, that it's not going to be a complete shock to the system. So I think that's something I'd love for you to take away from this episode, is to really think about what goal it is that you have, that you are aiming towards. And I think the key thing with goals, and the only thing you need to remember, is it just has to be personal to you. It doesn't, you don't have to aim to go and, to be an Olympic athlete. You don't have to aim to go and run the Marathon des Sables or throughout the Appalachian Trail. It's just got to be a goal that excites you and it scares you a little bit. The feelings are very similar, excitement and fear. They sort of manifest in the same ways. Those feelings in your stomach, the butterflies, that excitement, or is it fear? I'm always going to go with excitement. And it's nice if you've got something that does excite you. It gets you out of bed in the morning. It scares you a little bit because you're having to step outside of your comfort zone. And what happens when you do that is that's when you start to grow and develop as a person, because you are stretching yourself and you have to improve to reach that place where you can actually accomplish that goal. She had an incredible quote as well, which I'm just going to repeat here. Little goals, small successes, build your confidence and become the person you want to be. Little goals, small successes, build your confidence and become the person you want to be. And this is what it's all about, having these little goals in place, these little markers, this little these little goals, these stepping stones that you need to accomplish in order to achieve those big goals. And every time you set out to achieve something, you have a goal and you achieve it and you get that small success, it does build your confidence. And when you continue doing that, you're going to continue to grow and evolve as a person, and you're going to become the person who you wanted to become. So little goals, small successes, build your confidence and become the person you want to be. So I'm currently out cycling Pacific Coast Highway and the Baja Divide. I should be in Mexico at this point, making my way down the coast to Cabo. I have a flight booked out on the 21st of December, and I'll be flying off to Melbourne to spend Christmas with my brother and his family. My brother's recently just had a little baby boy called Charlie, who's now maybe 9 months old, and I have never met him. So I'm honestly super, super excited. I was very fortunate when Grace, his first child, was in 2016 when I was training for the Marathon des Sables. So I was actually over in Australia when she was born, which was, obviously amazing. I'm a very proud auntie. So that's sort of the next sort of focus for me. But new episodes of the Tough Girl podcast come out every Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time. Next week, we're going to be speaking to Ali Bailey, who's a runner. And then the following week, which is actually Christmas Day, don't worry, there still will be a podcast coming out, and it's going to be my podcast. It's going to be a special episode with me. I'm going to be talking all about Pacific Coast Highway, the Baja Divide, answering any questions that you may have, talking about, the high points, the low points, the journey, what I've learned along the way, talking about, maybe the people that I've met. It's really, it's very, very open to what you want to know. Obviously, we'll be sharing the journey as well through the vlog, through the podcast, through social media channels. So please do go check out toughgirlchallenges.com, where you can find all of the links. Now, I couldn't be doing what I'm doing without the incredible support of the amazing patrons who are sponsoring me from $2 to $25 a month. It makes a huge difference to have a regular source of income for putting out this content and helping to increase the amount of female role models in the media. If you're getting value from the Tough Girl podcast, then please think about paying it forward, that $10 a month, which, think of it as like a magazine subscription or buy me a cup of coffee every single month. It really does add up. And the more patrons I get, it gives me more freedom. It allows me to fund the running costs, because like anything in life, nothing is free. And it just allows me to continue putting out this content on a regular basis. It's something I'm incredibly passionate about. I've been doing it since the 4th of August, 2015. The Tough Girl podcast is an award-winning podcast. It won the Women's Sports Trust Big Game Changer Awards in April 2018. And there is a need for it. We need more female role models out there in the media. And if you want to make that a reality, then please do support me financially. It does make a big difference. To do that, please go to patreon.com, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast, and check out the different tiers, sign up. I would really, really appreciate it. But wherever you are listening, I really do appreciate your time. Have an awesome day. Give it your all. Make sure you've got that goal. I want to know what that goal is. And I'll be back with you next Tuesday. All right, take care. Lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.